Hello, I'm Paul Wilkinson and we're filming from my Kathmandu home where I've been based for about 7 years making documentaries about Himalayan shamanism and about Nepali culture. And today I'd like to show you a whole range of forged ironwork, mostly shamanic objects, but some other domestic things as well that sort of relate. So where to start? So iron is particularly related to the spirit world and to protection, partly because of its strength and hardness. And so let's start off with some bells. So this is a shamanic bell chain, and you can see the chain work is all forged. It's forged iron, and the way you can tell the forged iron is that it has little flat areas. So you imagine if you're hammering that out from a lump of iron, it's actually an enormous amount of work. For each loop might take hours to do. And then this sort of figure of 8 is often connected to the symbol for eternity and time. This has got one bell missing, and it's a male bell. So the female bells are the ones with the single slits, which is sort of like a vagina. And then the male bells usually have a cross section like that. And in this context, the open bell would be like a child bell. So you've usually got that male-female child aspect, or yin-yang Tao aspect within the bell chains. And you also have a number symbolism where you can often count off between male and female bells, or between male and child bells. So this type of these are probably originally cast and then hand hammered. Actually, mostly is forged. You can see with the thousands of little hammer marks around. And these are also forged iron. So these are forged bronze, and with usually an iron tongue. That one's got a copper tongue. That one's got an iron tongue. And so this type of bell they call eagle bells because they're lighter, and they're sometimes used in falconry for hunting. So then there's other objects. The sickles are sometimes used domestically. This one and another one I've got here somewhere is a shamanic sickle. This is a little bit heavier duty than normal, and you can see all the decorative ironwork with sort of snakes and zigzags for rice and for mountains. Very beautiful ironwork in the top as well, and you can see with the forged iron here, with the where it's had a repair from the hardwood handle. So these are used for domestically. So the sickles are used both in farming for chopping crops, for taking branches, but the shaman do a lot of digging around for roots and things for their herbal medicine, taking plants for particular offerings, branches of particular types of trees for making things. And so this is part of their everyday kit, and they wear them in a holster like that, which has got, you can see the flower of life type design. When it's got this grid, it quite often relates to Naga symbolism, where they have like grids made of like a sort of flower paste, but coloured in yellow and white and red. But a lot of the sickles have these sort of flower of life type variations in the designs. And then a smaller rye shaman sickle is this, with these beautiful spirals at the end. And that's a particular sort of rye shape. So that's worn mostly by the female shaman from their belt, and used again for herbs, and used quite often for divination, for cutting ginger. So they'll have the ginger and they'll be doing mantra, and then they cut the ginger, and the ginger falls and cuts in a particular way, and they interpret it depending on the question that they're asking. I saw an extraordinary example of that during my friend Mohan's funeral, where Parvati Rai, who led the shamanic funeral rites, was doing a divination for all the members of the family and the people very close to the family, like me included. And so she'd ask certain questions and then cut the ginger, and the ginger would fall. And then Mohan as a spirit was coming in and talking to them as well, giving individual messages for different family members. So these are, they're pretty important tools and part of their sort of sacred process. Other shamanic ritual tools are like this wonderful shaman knife, where you can see it's got the tika still all over it, with a wooden handle and a deer horn holder handle, with that forged iron folded over, a very fine blade, and then this thick iron wrapped around to make it attached to the deer horn. So with this, the shaman knife is used for all sorts of ritual tasks, like cleaning the etheric body, activating water while mantras being going on, cutting away negative energy, pinning down or stabbing negative energy. So there's a lot of crossover between the way in which something is used and the action of the thing, and the action inside the psyche. So so a knife is cutting and pointing and directing, and it's got that focused attention in its hardness. So it has a sort of activating quality. So as well as physically cutting something, you're emotionally cutting something, you're energetically cutting something. So someone asked me a very, very good question last night in response to another video that I'd made. And she asked, how is it that the knife, the action of the knife, is affecting the spirit world? And I think this is an extremely interesting question, because why should the spirit world be affected by some physical object? And I think there's a few different ways of answering that question. One is that the quality of your action has an energy and a focus to it, and the object itself is like a channel for those actions. So you end up with a repetitive focus into a particular way of being through the object. So in a sense, objects exist on multiple levels at once. They exist as a physical knife that's cutting, or a physical knife that's being used to focus your attention, maybe to energize water in a healing. But at the same time, you've got the action of the consciousness through the quality of the knife, through the quality of the edge, the pointing, that sort of dynamic aspect. So if you took something like this kami mask, the kami are particularly famed for their metal work. This is from far west Nepal, with a Shivic trident and a figure on the top, also in the form of a trident. One of the ways to think about that is that you've got the quality of the iron, which has a very particular quality in relation to water, in its hardness, the way that it sparkles when you burn it in fire. It has a particular dynamic and a particular energy to it. But when you put a mask on, there's also the way in which that becomes maybe an expression of your inner face. It's an expression of something in you that you're bringing out through the mask and through the dance that you animate through the mask. And so the mask becomes a vehicle for your actions. So it becomes a vehicle for your psyche to flood into that realm, and for you to then embody something which is maybe which would have been harder for you to have accessed without the mask as the vehicle. Here also is a beautiful cami shaman riding a tiger. Absolutely just wonderful. An amazing piece of work, because it's been sort of, you know, forged and folded out. I've done a little bit of forge work, and it's tremendously skillful to get that. I love the rawness of it. It's really very strong, almost like a sort of modern sculpture. So my background has originally come through the fine arts, so I have an enormous feeling for the sense of touch, the sense of making things, and I know what it would have taken to have made these objects. So here's an interesting example. These two have come out of shaman kits. They're extremely rare, many hundreds of years old, and they're herb medicine kits with forged iron pummels and forged. So it's not cast; it's hand hammered. I mean, that's a lot of work to hand hammer that into a vulva shape. So you've got the female and the male, and all in iron, and then on a larger scale with the same thing, with a big chunk of iron that's been hand hammered out. And sometimes when you're travelling up in the mountains, you'll see in the jungle, often way off in the distance on some crazy slope, you'll see little columns of smoke coming out, and that's where people are literally mining the iron out of the ground and smelting it using the wood from the jungle, and shamanically making their objects. I've yet to actually reach them, because it's like that. It looks like an hour's walk or 2 hours walk, but it's like 2 or 3 days walk, because it's so the terrain is so tough going. But at some point I plan to soldier on through the jungle and eventually find these blacksmiths working on, often for months on their own in the middle of the jungle, working on maybe where there's a deposit of iron, and they're actually smelting it and processing everything, and working there, maybe making their own charcoal for smelting. So other things. So these are shamanic fire tongs. So again, fire and metal, and wood, all the elements have that dynamic quality. So on where the quality of the object, the quality of the materials, becomes a part of the ritual. So you could approach a healing with fire tongs to deal with something that's particularly dangerous, or particularly needing of cleansing. So the fire tongs themselves are I've seen them used as a way of like disrupting the energy. So you've got the association of the fire and the metal, and then the way in which that's used as a ritual tool becomes those qualities become an element in their own psyche. So there are other interesting things here. So these very beautiful oil lamps, very old, again all forged. You can see that's come out of one piece of iron split into three. This is many hundreds of years old, and then the oil will be poured in here, and a wick. I actually bought these. I've been collecting these whenever I've found them, and these are three of the most beautiful ones that I've found. And you can see it's designed for travelling and placing and using. So one of the challenges when you're filming is light, because a lot of the rituals take place at night, and when you're using studio lights, artificial lights, you sometimes need that because there just isn't enough light, but you don't want to have that quality of a harsh, unnatural light. In a shamanic ritual, it's almost impossible to conceal a bright light, even if you have filters on it. And so I try and bring in natural fire and natural light where I can, because it keeps the quality sort of true. So I had started collecting various oil lamps, and you see that would be dug in the ground, and then you've got and I've got a number of other small clay oil lamps, so I'll take as part of my filming kit hundreds of oil lamps up. The shaman have their own as well, but you need to sometimes supplement the light with a bit of extra firelight, just so that you can see what's going on in the darkness. What else? This was probably used domestically, but this has come out of a shamanic kit. So again, you've got that sense of, you have something which is sort of domestically used, like fire tongs, something like that, which could have been used for farming or for some other, for maybe some form of cooking or stirring stuff, but probably farming because it's quite robust. But that was in with a whole load of shamanic objects, and so I'm guessing this would be used for pulling out energy, for some form of extraction, using the quality of the iron for dealing with ghosts and spirits and negative energy. So because the ironwork is often seen as a defence against the negative. So where else are we? So we've got interesting little things like these this is a little shaman knife with a tiny hole here where it may have been added to very occasionally you have shaman knives added to malas, but these very interesting holes here in the blade. I've no idea what that's about. 3 holes, one punched through almost, and 2 going through, and the same here repeated on the other side. And with maybe this is like a crescent with like a moon. Maybe the sun below, it might have something related to sunrise and sunset. Then with a tiger at the top and the 3 gods, 2 gods in this case, like on the Ferber. So again, forged iron. This is Mugger Shaman, forged iron cookery, but with a cast, probably aluminium or tin handle. Very, very unusual. I've never had another one with a cast handle. And you see with the shaman figure on here, sitting down, and with the arms and the head. Now this again is a magical weapon for directing energy, for channeling energy, for directing energy, for cutting away the unwanted, for entering into the body energetically to find the source of something, and then to maybe suck that out or draw that out and spit it away. Another beautiful little shaman knife that came out of a Mugger shaman kit with this forged blade, very beautifully and finely forged at the end here, and with probably a rising sun. I've actually never seen that design before, so I need to try and sort of figure that out. It's interesting when you have objects like this which are new. And again, this shape at the end is very unusual. I've not come across that as a knife handle before. This is also forged. You can see where it's big lump on the end, and this is Tibetan, and it's a seal. So you've got a sort of lotus, double lotus on the end here. Possibly was used for wax, possibly as a punch for softer metals. So you'd put it in and like that into the. Very unusual that it's like that. Then these also are forged, but with these are for making pieces of jewellery, but also forged iron. You see where it's been sawn across and then hand hammered, and then these designs etched in. Got a few of those. Really very, very interesting objects, where this you'd have a thin sheet of metal that would be rolled over and rolled over to make a type of chain design, like a die. And then they're using the iron because of its strength. I've included these because they're quite often made of iron. These don't have any iron ones here. These are ritual rings used for anchoring the energy. If you're in a sort of an energetic state, if you're in a sort of psychic state, sometimes the spirit can leave the body and people can actually die. And so they often use jewellery on particular chakra points, or to remind to keep the awareness in the body, to stop the spirit from leaving the body. And they're also seen as for protection. So often when people are around dead bodies, or in funeral rites, or particular rituals where maybe the spirits are summoned to do some sort of work, or in sort of exorcisms, you'll have people wearing rings like this. These aren't iron, but they're forged. So this is a piece of it's a bead made of copper, spiraled copper. This is also a bead, very, very old, many hundreds of years old. Something like that, you see, could even be thousands of years old, and it's impossible to tell. I mean, maybe there's the archaeological information somewhere about particular digs and things. This again came out of a shamanic kit. The spiral probably means something connected to time, but the metal itself has a quality to it. So copper, for instance, is quite often seen as related to Shiva, as like the blood of Shiva. So here is a triple trishul. So there's a single trishul, also all forged. This is much finer work than this one, and probably much older. You can see the iron often gets this interesting pattern where it's sort of eroded away over the centuries with these iron rivets. The triple is often to do with the triple world as well. So, and you've got the three of the trident itself is also a symbol for the three channels in the body, for the central channel and the two side channels. So relating to Kundalini, to rising energy. This is a little wooden container with two little seated figures, actually for forged iron jaw harps or dew harps, and this one doesn't have the jaw harps or dew harps in, but this little forged copper or bronze, actually forged bronze. So they've got the flattened out and hammered out the bronze, and then with an amazingly fine little chain that's got tangled up with the. So this came with two jaw harps that is now attached to the chain, but with little tiny designs on the end here. That one's probably, they're both functional. I can't really play these, but I have a very good friend, Johnny Cope, who's the most amazing jaw harp or juice harp player. But this is often part of the shamanic kit. So this one came out of again a Mugger Shaman kit, like a box full of their artifacts. Would have been, you know, one of their prized objects. So they used the jaw harps as a way of going into trance. And communicating with the spirit world, and this is probably from a different tradition, but still also for the jaw harps. That's probably Tamang, I think, with the pattern. And then there's a few other things here too. So this was once covered in gold, and it's many hundreds of years old. And you can see you have a bird, probably a peacock, at the top, and these lovely leaves. It would have been gilt, and it's a Nuari hair decoration for a woman. It would be. You can see I look very fashionable now, but isn't that just wonderful? Look at the amazing amount of work in that, where they've hand hammered it and then split. I mean, that is just tremendous. It's not welded together or anything. They've just split it and then folded it out and hammered it. Just absolutely wonderful. Really, as an artist, I find these objects really inspiring in their own right, and just intrinsically interesting and nice. And so, because of that, this is absolutely useless to me in a practical sense, but it's a forged pair of scissors. I mean, it's really, look at the fineness, almost like dressmaking scissors, but it's been hand hammered out. It's not, you know, many hundreds of years old, and still would cut. But it's just such a lovely thing with you see the forged rivet. I could probably clean that up a little bit, but it's just a very nice object. And again, this is just domestic, but again, an enormous amount of work. I mean, if blacksmiths end up seeing this, I think they'll be very happy, because in the West these things will have stopped being made hundreds of years ago, and so just a ladle. But again, with something like shamanism, everything has that double layer, so it would be possible for a domestic object to become a part of your healing practice. Everything has those multiple layers of potential meaning. So, you know, just as a ritual light might be used in a normal setting, or also used for a particular ritual. So this piece I also found in a shamanic box. It's forged iron, and it's a very ancient armour-piercing spearhead, and this is probably the back end of it. It's possible that that's another type of spearhead, but I think it probably would have been paired, and you can always tell the quality of the armour piercing because they've got this heavy, squared off way for punching through something. And I suspect this is either Tibetan or Mongolian. I'm not sure that the Nepali had that type of heavy armour that would have needed that. And if this is part of the other side of it, then it's possibly for defence against cavalry as well, because you'd need to be able to dig into the ground, and then you'd be able to hop brace yourself. But again, just a fascinating object, many hundreds of years old. I just found this in with a whole load of other stuff in an antique shop, and they had no idea really what it was.
and there was a whole collection of shamanic things in a basket with nearly everything broken, and sometimes it's worth having, just because you find interesting things in amongst the broken feathers and I try to, if I can mend stuff or repair stuff, I do. So there's always a sort of ongoing process of repairing and trying to sort of fix things. Like this bell chain has a male bell missing, so I'll do my best to find one which is like it. You can see here with the loop is and then other small objects like that. This is also forged iron. Sometimes you find these cast in bronze, but this is for the gadgul. So gadgul is a type of eye makeup, like a bit like eyeliner, but made of soot, like wood soot from the fire. So they'd collect the very fine, and that you can see that's just so it would hold it. They collect it, but they use, and it's got that little forged over, bent over bit, so it locks, so you can fit it up with your soot. And you still see in certain rituals where the young girls or the old ladies even, they'll put the makeup over the eyes like this, running over. Very, very beautiful object. This isn't shamanic, but the process of making up for particular rituals also is shamanic. So it's a sort of object a shaman might have used, but just coming from their own from their domestic tradition, but they're still using it. And then other things like, well, these are also forged actually, but these are forged in copper. So the nagas with the multiple heads, and they're made in 2 pieces. But you can see it's not pipe. It's all been hand hammered out. Sometimes these go around the Shiva lingam as sort of protective quality. I have a very strong connection to the naga, so you can see I've got a number of them here around. And in a few days' time is a wonderful festival called Nag Panchami, where people put the nagas as protection over their doors with these printed images of snakes and snake gods and goddesses with sort of protective mantra. So really look at that. You can see it's got gold leaf and around like so this has got a single head, and that one's got 5. They're always odd numbers. I still don't know why. I've asked, and people say yes, it's always odd numbers, but finding out why is the hard thing here. So that's probably everything. This is a piece that I'd actually commissioned myself up in the mountains, so it's got quite a rustic wooden handle, still a hardwood scabbard, and simple handle here. But I've been trying to commission the blacksmiths in the areas where I visit to make things, partly because it's interesting to do and nice to film, but also because there's a real loss of these types of hand skills, and so where I can, I try and foster them as much as I can. And at some point, I'd like to develop some sort of project which is having where I'm specifically commissioning on a much larger scale to try and keep some of these wonderful skills in use. So I hope you enjoyed that. You can see there's just a massive range of these beautiful sorts of things made of ironwork, and the magical quality of the cam masks and cam tiger. But do let me know if you found this interesting, and if you have any questions, do ask. Give feedback, and let me know if there's other videos you'd like, and I'll see you at the next one. Thank you.